I am joined today by George Estrada. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. George is here as the not only the CIO, or excuse me, CTO, both
Yeah, Chief Technology and Innovation Officer. Yeah,
at Rise Credit Union, as well as from Orion, which is his consulting and doing firm. Recently started. So, George, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and the company and what you're doing?
sure. Thank you. George Estrada, I've recently finished a tenure of 5 years over at Amazon Web Services. And prior to that, I was a CTO for a managed service provider and a CIO for a think tank before that. So I've been in the leadership role in tech for over 20 years. And, you know, I you know, while at AWS, I focused on helping build the credit union team, and that's how I met Sue Mitchell and the Underground and Mitchell Stankovich. And look, there was a lot about this industry that just attracted me. The the need for a lot of modernization. The mission in and of itself has been very, very targeted, and it's one of those things that when you're doing technology, if you have a mission and you know what those outcomes that you're trying to drive, can be very inspirational, right?
Mm.
So one of the things that I did as I left was I started my own consulting group, Orion Digital Services, and I will be working with Mitchell Stankovich and the Underground with this model, the CUSP model that the Underground put together. And this is a shared services model to help credit unions of all sizes, but really focus on the mid-size and the smaller credit unions where, fractional services, especially as defined by Mitchell Stankovich, can really deliver some real value across the board for organizations. So very excited this new chapter in my life, and I'm looking forward to bringing a lot of that experience to the fold here.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned the CUS model that came out of the underground. Can you talk a little bit more about that and your role in there?
Yeah, well, look, I think that one of the things that we were talking when we started discussing the CUS model is what are the real pain points that credit unions have? And sometimes, it could be something like, they're all you have like five or six credit unions in one particular region, all duplicating the same efforts, right?
Mhm.
So they may have Office 365, for example, as their platform, mail platform, email platform, and they have very little use of all the powerful and security features because they only have one person per credit union that really has a limited amount of time to do that. So what if they could share resources to do that? They could share the resource to manage all their environments at the same time. Um, and usually you would say, well, that's what managed services are like, and they are, but how about a strategy, right? Because you could have five different MSP all managing very differently, but if you had, some fractional services, whether it's a CISO, Chief Security Officer, Information Security Officer, or CTO, um, or CEO, or COO, any one of those leadership roles, they could shape the strategy for that collective of credit unions, and then you have a more effective use of these tools, right?
Mhm.
So that is something that model really started, and it's not limited just to technology, right? It could be around vendor management. It could be around purchasing, or it could be around back office. Back office is the most repetitive. You have accounting, you have human resources. So you get the drift there. But, you know, and folks can argue, well, you could do that already. Kinda, right? But with the CUS model, what you're doing, you're bringing the values that I was talking about earlier of credit unions to the fold. So you're getting these services with the mindset of the credit union mission.
Hmm. Which is so important. And unfortunately, the back office type operations you're talking about are so unsexy. They always want to hear about how do we do new lending and stuff, but really the efficiencies and the value that come out of cleaning up that back office, having it more streamlined, not only, in a credit unions, in a dozen or more credit, there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained there. And so I think it's a great opportunity. And really that's what credit unions are supposed to be doing, is returning the best value to their members.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but because I want to highlight one point there, right? So if you went to a traditional fractional strategy with different consultants all over the place, they're going to bring, for the most part, the mentality of like, yeah, we're going to combine these back office roles, right? With the idea that we're going to go for efficiencies, and usually that's tied with a very narrow scope of getting rid of people.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, I'm not a big fan of like tying efficiency with or equating efficiency to getting rid of people. I think efficiency, when you manage it properly, take advantage of the efficiencies, meaning, okay, so I don't need 10 people to do this. I could use it, do five, but what can those five team members do for our members?
Hmm.
Deliver more value, maybe you recalibrate their roles so that they have more front time, airtime with members, right? So that's the difference. That's what we're
Yeah.
driving at, is that, yeah, they're going to be efficiencies. We're going to eliminate redundancies where you need to, but it's not because we want to just get rid of people. We want to focus them in areas where they can deliver true value to the members.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's so important for cranes, because they want to always treat their members right. Well, their employees are their members too, and
Exactly.
so we need to keep that in mind. Um, and but it's interesting because even coming from a huge company like AWS, you're very much in favor of working with these small and mid-sized credit unions, which are even small and mid. They're small for the overall corporate world. And so, like, how did your background help you to move into this type of position?
So I've been very fortunate in my career. I started with a think tank in DC, and we were very scrappy. We didn't
Mhm.
have a lot of money. I had to be very creative with how we moved around. I had a great team of developers. We were very active, so we learned to do more with less. And when I went to the MSP, it was very similar. We had a broad range of customers, whether some of them were defense contractors, some of them were contractors for the intelligence community, some of them were nonprofits. So we had to figure out and be creative on how to maximize our resources. So how does, like, what Amazon brings to the table, and I've been a big fan of Amazon since 2009, is that they bring and drive choice, and it gets overlooked a lot. Folks think it's big Amazon. It's like, no, they drive choice. They have, they got Netflix is one of their
Mhm.
biggest customers. They have Amazon Prime. They compete with them, right?
Mhm.
They give their customers choices. So coming to the back to the credit union and working with them for the last 5 years in that capacity, and now in my new role, is I'm driving to get choices. And
Mhm.
credit unions have been very limited in a closed ecosystem. Okay, that has been very forcing them to make choices that they really weren't in their best interest or the interests of the members, right?
Mhm.
So I think I'm very well prepared to be scrappy. I'm very well prepared to force choices, right?
Mhm.
Find choices. I don't want to be told what tool to use just because, right?
Right.
So I'm not going to take that as an answer. We have options, and we should be demanding more. It's like folks should be valuing our business, and
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that I've noticed over and over again. It's people taking credit unions for granted and the business that they bring.
Yeah. Yeah. And collectively, they're a whole lot, stronger, bigger to do that. Yeah.
Yes, and they do that very well, right? That was one of the first things I learned in the underground. I couldn't believe it,
Mhm.
there were some, I met some vendors in the process that were kind of cynical, right? They're like, oh, credit unions will never do this, credit unions will never do that. They don't understand that. And I found that very demeaning and disrespectful. But then when I go to underground and I start meeting folks, and these folks are very smart.
Mm-hmm.
They hold their cards very close to them because they have to respect the interests of their members. But then when you get to know them and you get to trust you and you get to trust them, the doors open up. And guess what happens, right? That collective is
Yeah,
very strong,
it
right?
is.
So it's like you gotta earn your trust with one, and then that'll open the doors for the next one and so on. But I think that now, what I like to do is help inspire the movement to use that trust and that collective to demand better services, better products. Don't take
Mm-hmm.
what they want to give you, take what you need.
Yeah. Because one of the things that, the younger members don't have the technology, the customer member facing technology that they want. And so they aren't only, I think it was 4%, 6%, something like that, are members of credit unions. And but when you are in this closed system where you have very little choice, if any, of what mobile carrier you use, whatever the product is or service that you're offering your members, a lot of that is determined by the vendors. And that's just awful. Thinking handcuffed like that, for
Yeah.
sure. And so yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for small and mid-sized cranes. I mean, they're merging every day, it seems like, and to save some of the ones that really should be, that are strong financially, that don't have this one thing or that thing that are actually very important. And so, one of the main reasons you see the mergers is because of you'll be able to receive better services.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, to stop the ones that are unnecessary, I think is a large part of what the underground's going for with this particular product too.
Oh yeah, and the underground has been amazing. If you haven't been there, make sure you go, right? These events are very poignant, targeted, and they challenge the common thought, right? It's like, okay, why did we do this? It's like, I remember Sue was the first one to challenge, the whole idea of cores, right? When I first
Mm,
met her. And she was like, well, why aren't we talking to cloud native core providers? And
mhm,
people are like, no, why would we? It's like, they're not ready. Who says that they're not ready? Right? Why not bring them here? And she brought them to the underground. She challenged them. She asked them questions. And guess what? What that started doing, it started getting CEOs comfortable with the idea of talking about modern cores.
mhm,
And you still get the cynics that push back and say, "Oh, those cores will never be ready." They will be ready one day. They will be
mhm,
ready. And if you haven't started discussing it, if you haven't started asking the questions, you're going to get caught out there, right?
mhm.
Because there's some real big ones coming from Latin America and Europe, and that conversation started with Sue when
Yeah.
everybody else said we shouldn't be having that conversation.
Yeah, we just added a client that's from Australia that's a core, it's just
Mhm.
what do they're going to come in if our current cores that are available here in the US don't get some stuff straightened out. Um, and so like you're going to be on a panel at the underground.
Mhm.
Um, excuse me. And your panel is called of Tension. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about that one and also some of the other content that you're looking forward to that's coming at the Underground on October 25th?
Yeah. Look, I think that's going to be a fun panel because we're going to be talking about everything from Web 3.0, which everybody forgot about because of the AI craze, AI, the whole idea of trust per verify, right? And how to invest smart in tech. But, look, the title architects of tension is that there should be tension in leadership. Okay. And everybody tends to think that that's negative. And it's like, it isn't, right? My job as a technologist is to challenge the conventional thinking. Okay. My job is to identify not just the bleeding edge technology, but how about the technology that's been around that does a really good job? We're just not using it effectively.
Hmm.
Right. And what I mean by that is like, yeah, look, even with some of the existing cores out there, they have good technologies that people aren't using.
Mm,
They move to another shiny object, and they're doing they're using the technology 30 to 40% less effectively than if they focus on, okay, can we do this? Give you an example. A spreadsheet is a very powerful tool. It still is,
mm,
for good calculations. I mean, that's it. It's effective. And sometimes that's all you need to manage a project. Do you need, smart sheets? Do you need a big, project planning tool? I don't know if you have the resources, if it's that big an endeavor, but if it's something that's going to take 3 weeks to do, you could probably run it off a spreadsheet. I would argue you could run it off a notepad, right?
mm.
So, so why do you have to have that tension? Because you have to challenge and maximize the value of the technology and the investments you've made,
Mhm.
and balance that with the new opportunities and new technologies are bringing in. Okay. And so you got to challenge, you got to push and say, okay, I know that, Sarah, I know that you've been doing this and you're comfortable with this technology and it's reliable, but what's the roadmap in 3 years? Will this technology keep pace with our members?
Mhm.
Right. So that's where you really pull and get that tension going.
Mhm. For sure. And so I know we've got some, in addition to yourself, there are other stars that are going to be there, like Steve Bohannon is
Right.
going to be moderating yours.
Uh,
Um, what about like some other kind of controversial topics that you think you are hoping will come up during the underground?
I mean, I think the topic of ecosystem is going to definitely come up, right? And the ecosystem we have, and is it is it a functional ecosystem, right? It's funny because everybody uses the word very loosely, because it picked up, I think, in the 80s or 90s. It was like, oh, the rainforest ecosystem, you know, but ecosystems go south too, right?
Hmm.
There could be an imbalance. You bring a predatory spray, uh, 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 creature, for example, it's something that you bring a python into the Everglades and it throws off the balance in the ecosystem,
Right.
right? The predatory species, So eh, is that happening in our ecosystem? Do we have some predatory species that have taken root and we need to watch out for? I mean, that's real. Okay. I
Mhm.
think the CEO's takeover is going to be phenomenal. Yeah, the lineup that the Mitchell Sankovich has put together is going to be great. I encourage everyone to go. These are the folks that are really leading our industry at the top end of it, right? So it'll be interesting to hear them talk about some of the issues. The CUS model, really discussing in detail the last underground in at GAC. It was introduced in detail, but now we're really going to be executing, right? So we're going to
Mhm.
really be talking about not only the role that I and Orion Digital Services will be playing, but the role that other colleagues and other services, the work that we've been putting and identifying and vetting a lot of these vendors that really are going to be more partners, right? Because that's what Mitchell Stankovich and Cuss has been doing is vetting people that are going to be more than vendors. They're going to be
Right.
partners, right?
Partners.
So we're going to have discuss the Cuss model in detail, and and then also talk about a lot of the changes at the NCUA and what it means with all the regulatory moving
Mm.
around, and how do we navigate, and more
Right.
importantly, how do we use technology to help us navigate?
Yeah, and especially NCUA, the current chairman slash only board member is really tech heavy, really into tech. So, I mean, it could be a good sign, could be a bad sign, we don't know. But
Mhm.
yeah, so that's going to be super interesting how that ties in with the other topics as well. And so, um, now, how did you end up? I mean, I guess you met Sue somewhere along the lines, and you ended up she did that arm twisting that you don't even know she's twisting your arm. She does, she's good at that. Um, so how did you originally get involved?
So I was introduced to her by a good industry friend, and he said, "Look, you need to talk to her." He saw what I was trying to do, with credit unions at AWS. And, it was very hard to break in. I was going to conferences, I was meeting with CEOs and, making myself available, but it was very hard. And then I met with Sue, spent a lot of time with her. She taught me a lot about the credit union industry that I wasn't aware of. And then I started participating in the underground.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't, and it wasn't quid pro quo. I would go, I would give the message of what Amazon wanted to do and how we wanted to help the industry, but it wasn't like do us and don't do them, and it was none of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a lot of airtime speaking and really engaging and making good friendships that have lasted over the
Yeah.
years. So that opened the door for us at Amazon and the underground and Mitchell Stankovich to really start tackling some topics. So I'll give you one of the best initiatives we did when ChatGPT hit the scene. Everybody was all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did was I went to Sue and I said, Sue, look, AWS is more than willing to provide some of our top thought leaders, okay, in the space,
Mm-hmm.
to meet with credit unions and help them answer questions.
Mm-hmm.
So Mitchell Stankovich said, "Hey, how about if we put together and collaborate on a white paper on generative
Mm-hmm.
AI?" And so Sue was able to gather uh, CEOs, board members, uh, some CIOs and CTOs from the credit union industry, and over the course of 4 months myself and a couple of senior leaders in the AI space who were literally trotting around the globe
Mm-hmm.
talking about generative AI, met with them over the course of 4 months, 2 hour increments, answering all their questions. They were coming with every question that they had. And then Mitchell Stankovich, this cohort of credit union leaders, put together the generative AI white paper.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that's still available
Yeah.
on the Mitchell Stankovich site. But that was an amazing experience of collaboration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Amazon, I thought, AWS put their best foot forward by providing resources that could answer executive questions that they needed. And this is something that, quite frankly, a lot of other industries weren't getting because they weren't asking.
Hmm.
Okay. And Mitchell Stankovich became a very key channel for that. But I think that what that white paper did was help address for a lot of leaders in the credit union space how to think about generative AI because it was still evolving and it still is evolving, right? So yeah, I think that meeting her and following her lead and her mentorship really opened the doors and opened my eyes on the potential that this industry has. And I do think that there's a lot of potential. And while there's still a lot of folks that think and are calling out, oh, the end is nigh, I think we're just getting started. I
Mm-hmm.
just think we have, like my CEO, Jennifer Oliver, is quite the visionary and she's quite the entrepreneur and she's not afraid to take chances and ask the right questions and push hard and create that tension, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
there are others like her in the industry. And you know where
Mhm.
they show up? They show up at the
At the
underground,
underground.
right? So that's that. I think that we are. I'm hoping, and I trust that the reason Orion Digital Services is going to play a big role, along with Mitchell Stankovich and the underground and other leaders, to do a renaissance of the credit union industry. And I think we're going to do there. And those that don't believe it, that's fine. They could sit by the sidelines and watch us.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that attitude. So, yeah, I mean, there's so much to come out of it. Why do you think people need to be there on October 25th? What is the most important thing you think for credit union executives and board members?
Well, I think first and foremost is to get the the way to get a really good uh, walkthrough on how we're going to execute CUS and how we
Mm-hmm.
are executing CUS. It's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you see the mechanics, now you see how this works, and you're going to see how it scales. That's number one. And you're going to have us there, just think of this myself. You're going to, Jennifer Oliver, you're going to have us all there to answer those questions with real live examples.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I think that we are at a pivotal moment in the industry. And I know everybody always says that, but I don't think people quite get it. There's a big presence of credit unions led by Mitchell Stankovich in 2020, a few days after that.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And that's going to be huge. I'm also a speaker that week, Sue and her team have put an amazing program along with the Money 2020 folks. And you know what that means is like you got to be there because we are no longer afraid to collaborate and work with fintechs. And it goes back to
Mhm.
that ecosystem mentality, right? Let's find the invader species, get them out of the ecosystem, and replenish them with species that are more friendly to the system.
Yeah.
Okay, and build that. So yeah, I think that's the biggest, whys, the hows and whys for Cuss. Uh, the CEO takeover of the stage, and ask these CEOs these questions. What's
Mm.
their vision for the industry? What is the vision for AI in the industry for uh, uh, cryptocurrency now that the Genius Act has been passed? How are they looking at it? And you're not going to get the opportunity to ask these individuals the way you will at the underground. So I think it's very important, and we're going to see the acceleration of a lot of change in our industry over the coming years.
Yeah, I hope so, and for the better. And to put it this right before Bunny 2020 is such a great idea to then kind of guide everybody over to Money 2020. And the fact that they have a credit union track this year is amazing.
Yeah,
Um, that's really
I would add one thing. Uh, there's this quote. I don't remember the book, but it was very interesting, right? And because one character tells the other, if you're asking the wrong question, I never have to worry about you getting the right answer.
okay.
Right? It's very dark and cynical
Yes.
comment, right? I say that because part of what people are going to get at the underground is what are the questions you should be asking of the fintechs? What are the questions you should be asking of yourself? What are the questions you should be asking of the NCUA? Right? Get equipped with that. That way, they have to worry that you're going to get the right answers.
Hmm.
And that's a real big value proposition, I think, that you're just not you're gonna miss out if you're not there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And now I could go on forever, but as we wrap up, I'm going to give you the opportunity, as I always do for my guests, to provide your final thoughts. What would you like to leave our credit union audience with?
That the future's bright. It's as simple as that. There's a lot of there's a lot of folks that feel like, oh, the idea of cooperatives is it's an ancient thought. I don't believe that. There are those that somehow think it's not consistent with free markets. Again, you're wrong, right?
Hmm.
I think that this is the power of free markets,
Hmm.
right? And I think that technology is changing it so that the barrier of entry is way lower. While a lot of credit unions might have uh, missed a couple of opportunities to modernize, the technology is getting such that they could leapfrog and catch up.
Yes.
And there are going to be some players out there. There are players already out there that will be able to, some smaller credit unions are going to be able to deliver better services than the mid to larger credit unions just because they're able to leapfrog. And
Mhm.
here's the golden opportunity, right? And I have to give this credit to Jennifer Oliver. Um, if you're too small, there's some disadvantages there, right? Because it's like, how do I make that leap, right? If
Mhm.
you're too big, bureaucracy sets in. But if you're in that middle section,
Right.
you have a lot of flexibility. You're nimble. You can move around before the bureaucracy settles in. And there's a lot of opportunity to then pave the way for the smaller credit unions. And that's what CUS is all about. Okay.
Hmm.
It's about helping those smaller credit unions get on par, leapfrog, and provide those competitive services that then make them relevant, that then
Hmm.
make them a value proposition for the communities that they're serving.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time today, George.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it.